Hi, it's Leila, the proud poly kinky queer slut. Okay, I'm gonna give you the basics on consent theory and what consent is. It's so maddening that this is not just widely known, but it isn't. So many people don't even know what consent really means. So here it is. Okay, so basic principle of consent is I own my body. I'm an autonomous person of my own right. Anyone who wants to impose on my body in any way must ask for consent to do that. And I must affirmatively grant that consent, or they do not do that. So very, very simple example. So somebody wants to touch my hair. Well, they need to say, Leila, may I touch your hair? And then I need to say, yes, you may touch my hair. And then they can touch my hair. If alternately someone says, Leila, you have lovely hair. May I touch your hair? And I say, no, thank you. I don't want you to touch my hair. They do not touch my hair. And any other part of my body. So there are a myriad of situations where consent is not about sex at all. It's just about moving through the world. And where consent is not actually asked for before people violate our personal space and boundaries with our bodies. So, for example, I have a child. That child is, going to visit grandma. Grandma wants to forcibly grab them and hug them without asking. I, as parent, interrupt and say, excuse me, no, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but we are teaching consent to my child. So instead, here's how you do it. Get down on their level and say, hey, may I hug you? Would you like a hug? And allow them to say yes or no with no consequences, no negative consequences if they say no. And this is very important because we are taught we do not have the agency to say no. Especially women and girls are taught that we do not have the agency to say no. But in general, also parent to child, we are taught not to have bodily autonomy. And that is harmful. That makes it hard for us. It makes it so we freeze instead of saying no. It also makes it so that we as adults, when we want to say no, instead of saying no as a complete sentence and having that at the end, feel like we need to justify or soften our no's. So that means, so here's an example. So somebody says, one, rom-coms teach us that it is best if somebody just walks up and kisses you without asking. No, no, it's not. Ask. So somebody walks up and says, may I kiss you? Hopefully you're in a conversation first or have some history. But anyway, the question is asked, may I kiss you? So I, being conditioned to have to endure the hugs and kisses of grandmas and aunts and having the inability to tell that coworker not to hug me and, all this infringement on my bodily autonomy, might have the instinct to, in that moment, even if I want to say no, to say, oh, not right now, maybe later. Because I'm taught that I don't have a right to say no. And this is a subtle, insidious conditioning. So practice for you. If you think that you've got this down and that saying no is easy, do a no practice with a friend, with a lover, with somebody you trust, where you do the hair example, may I touch your hair? And where the assignment is ask and then the no being the complete answer with no justification needed. I thought I had this down. Then I did that exercise and found myself totally equivocating. The words coming out of my mouth were just like, oh, not right now, maybe later. And when I had meant to say no, I didn't even know I was conditioned that way, but I was. So yeah, practice consent. Practice consent with kids, practice consent with coworkers, practice consent with yourself. Just in the mirror, practice saying no. Because being able to say no gives you the freedom to say yes. And that feels wonderful. So that's how consent works. A few other things about consent. Consent must be informed. And it must not be coerced, and it must be revocable, which means that, so if I say, yes, you can kiss me, that doesn't mean that I can't then say, no, I don't want to kiss you anymore and leave. If I say, yes, I'm going to go back to your place and I want to have sex, then that doesn't mean I can't midway say, no, I don't want to have sex anymore and leave. Always revocable. Not coerced. There must not be conditions or guilt trips or a sense of obligation that is underlying that consent. Consent must be freely given, or it is not consent. A yes that is associated with guilt tripping or with gaslighting or with any kind of coercion is not a valid yes. And also power differentials can go into that. So for example, if there's one person in the relationship that has dramatically more power than the other, there may be implied like power differential kind of things that need to be explored there in order for the consent to actually be valid. So there's a lot to consent theory, but at its core, it is that before doing anything that involves someone else's body, ask and then receive an affirmative, enthusiastic yes, or anything else, anything that isn't an enthusiastic, affirmative yes is a no. And then if we say no, good practice, this is just bonus points. Good practice is when someone says no, thank them for their no, because it's hard to say no. And the more that we can trust the no's, the more we can get to a world that is full of yeses that are enthusiastic and fun. And the best way I heard this was when someone says no, say thank you very much, and then in your mind, thank you for not wasting my fucking time. Because if you say no, then I can go find somebody else who wants to do that with me, who's going to be an enthusiastic yes, rather than thinking just continuing to stick around. So. And hope that no becomes a yes. No's do not become yeses. A no is a full stop and an end. And then if the person who says no reconsiders, they can come back and ask a different question. So yeah, that's what consent theory is basically about. Thanks very much for listening. This is Leela, the proud poly kinky queer slut. Have a great day.